Today we will see how world champion Magnus Carlsen decided to checkmate, but very quickly regretted it. The game was played in the second round of the 2018 World Rapid Chess Championship. In the first round, Carlsen lost after running out of time, and, obviously, he did not approach this game in the best mood. His opponents were a clear underdog, an unknown 16-year-old chess player from Uzbekistan, whose rating was 600 points lower than Carlsen. This is just a catastrophic difference. That's several chess levels. And it is not surprising that, having such initial data, Magnus began to act strange from the very beginning. The first move was the usual one, e4. To which the young opponent responded with e5, obviously counting on a classic opening. But it followed, queen h5. With this move, Magnus showed what he thinks about his opponent. He immediately leaned his elbows on the table and hid his face behind his palm. It's difficult to say what his face expressed, either embarrassment or mockery. Vakhidov even sat up in his chair twice. Obviously, he did not understand what this meant. In fact, it was nothing more than a clear disregard for the opponent. After the move knight c6, Carlsen, without embarrassment, continues with bishop c4, thus trying to deliver a childish checkmate. Here, even a non-master will simply play knight f6, defending against checkmate and continuing the development of his pieces. But sitting opposite is the world champion himself. Vakhidov's response is not the strongest, queen e7. Here even Magnus thought for a few seconds. And made a developing move, knight e2. Knight f6, d2 d3, bishop g7, knight c3 and h7 h6. Prevention against move bishop g5. If the knight had been tied up, there would have been an unpleasant situation, knight d5. But Magnus still places his knight on the d5 square, knight d5. An exchange takes place and now the question is, what to do with the horse? Vakhidov chooses not the best option. He drives the knight to the ends of the earth, knight a5. Here Magnus finds the strongest answer, d6. This forces black to double his pawns, since capturing with the queen is impossible due to the weakness of the f7 pawn. After bishop d5, it turns out that it is very difficult for black to complete the development of his queenside. The knight returns closer to the events, knight c6, bishop d2 and black are trying to exchange queens, queen f6. White is not satisfied with this. The queen is e4. Castling, knight e7, an attempt to expel the white bishop and somehow complete the development. White pulls up the knight, knight c3. If black eats the bishop, then an even more unpleasant knight will rise in its place. Therefore, black again proposes an exchange of queens, queen f5. This is not the best move. It would have been more appropriate to play rook b8, and answer f4 with b5, completing its development. Magnus does not want to change, queen b4, I attack the pawn d6, which was previously defended by the queen. Well, then the knight takes on d5, the knight takes on d5, a fork threatens on e7, and the king has to be removed. Knight c7, rook b8 and queen takes on d6. The material balance has been restored. The black pieces stand scattered. It is not clear how to develop the light-squared bishop, and here, after the move b6, the first climax came. Carlsen didn't see a winning continuation. He simply played f3, preventing the advance of the black pawn, bishop b7. Let's take a break. 5 seconds. Try to find this move. I hope you managed to find this difficult move, because even the world champion didn't see it. This move is knight e8. What is the point of this move? The connection between the black rooks is interrupted with a simultaneous attack on the rook. The rook goes to a8 and now the knight fulfills its mission. It takes the bishop on g8. The king takes the knight and the bishop with check takes the pawn on h6. The king is forced to take on h6, the queen takes check on f8 and white has an extra pawn, an exchange, and a better position. But Magnus Carlsen did not see all this and played modestly f3, followed by bishop b7, rook e1, rook c8. Carlsen was too relaxed here and did not sense the approaching danger. Bishop c3. This was a critical mistake. After the move bishop f8, the white queen's only option was to take the e5 pawn. But in this case, after the exchange of queens, black played d6 and the knight and bishop were hanging. White was left without a piece. And here Magnus simply lost. He considered that the best chance was to play without a queen.
Knight c7, b5. Bishop f8 takes queen d6. Knight b5 takes bishop d6. Queen f5, e6. Knight d6 takes rook c8. Rook b8 takes knight c8. Rook e1 takes pawn e5. Queen e6, d6. Rook f1, e1. Bishop b7, d5. Pawn a2, a4. Bishop d5, e6. Pawn a4, a5. Pawn b6 takes pawn a5. King g1, f1. Rook c8, c5. Rook e5 takes rook c5. Queen d6 takes rook c5. Rook e1, a1. Pawn d7, d5. Rook A1 takes pawn A5. Queen C5, C7. Rook A5, A4. Queen C7 takes pawn H2. Rook A4 takes pawn A7. Queen H2, H1. King F1, F2. Pawn D5, D4.
With d4, Vakhidov sentenced Magnus. The world champion gave up. And I must say, it was not a premature decision. Then it could be like this.
Bishop C3 takes pawn D4. Queen H1, H4. King F2, E3. Queen H4, E1. King E3, F4.
Pawn G6 G5, checkmate. Carlsen decided not to give his very junior opponent such pleasure, so he simply gave up on move 37. After such a discouraging start to the tournament, 2 defeats in a row, Magnus left the hall at a very fast pace. He decided to walk through the streets of St. Petersburg. He signed autographs to those who recognized him and simply got rid of negative emotions. If you liked the review, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.